Hey guys, so today I'm going to be looking at people who had the most spine tingling experience. So yeah, let's just get right into the video. I do real estate photography. One day I was alone shooting in an empty house, which is quite normal. I had this really uncomfortable feeling that I wasn't alone. I had already checked the whole house before I started taking photos, but I kept getting the feeling that someone else was there. The feeling was so strong that I had goosebumps and felt nauseous. I'm not a small guy, but I felt like a little kid scared of the dark. I decided to recheck all the rooms to ease my mind, but didn't find anything. I checked closets, bathrooms, bedrooms, etc., but I was definitely the only one there. As I finished shooting the last room in the house, this feeling that someone was with me was so overwhelming that I pretty much sprinted out of the house when I took the last shot. I felt better when I got outside, but I still had an uneasy feeling. The realtor ended up pulling in the driveway as I was finishing photos of the front of the house and asked if the house cleaner did a good job. I said it looked fine to me, and she went into the house with her husband to prep it for a showing. When I was shooting the backyard, I noticed them both out of the corner of my eye through a back window, but there was a third person with them. I was confused because they came alone without anyone else. Turns out the house cleaner wasn't finished before I pulled up and came in. She saw a large guy with tattoos come into the house and panicked, so she jumped into the kitchen pantry and hid. By the time she realized I was the photographer, it was too late for her to come out without it being awkward, so she stayed in the pantry the whole time. I'm not sure if maybe I saw her out of the corner of my eye when walking past, or if maybe I smelled her perfume, heard her breathing and didn't realize it, but my subconscious was screaming at me that someone was there. It was the most uncomfortable I've ever been inside a house like that before, and made for a funny story after. The freaking house cleaner was like, "Oh, we gotta hide because I don't want to talk to anyone." I mean, I'm assuming by the way that he's saying it was she was afraid of a guy with tattoos because he was like a big guy, right? But man, I can definitely relate to the house cleaner. I think I would do the same. I would just hide as well. Oh my god, the fact that she hid into the kitchen pantry. That's hilarious. And she came out when he left, right? His gut feeling did tell him something was wrong though. He has a good gut feeling. When my kids went to bed, I used to go out to the barn where I had a bottle of whiskey stashed. I'd have a drink and ponder the day, think about my late wife, and attempt to decompress. I suffered heavily with PTSD. Add to that the recent loss of my wife, the stress of raising two children that really didn't know me, and intense pain from severe burns I had received before leaving the Marine Corps. It's safe to admit that I was extremely depressed. One particular night, I wrote out a long letter to my family, letters to my children, and placed them along with my will, financial documents, etc., on the kitchen table. I went out to the barn with a pistol and had every intention of getting drunk and eating around. I was as low as I've ever been in my life. All of a sudden, my dad walked into the barn. He lived 2 hours away, and we hadn't spoken in a couple of weeks. He picked up the handgun, cleared it, dropped the magazine without a word. I asked him what he was doing there at 10 p.m. and he said, "I had a bad feeling, let's talk." That's the one and only time I've ever seen my dad cry. That's the only time we've ever spoken in detail about our individual horrors of combat. My dad saved my life that night, and I've made sure to live my life in such a way as to make him proud of everything I do. Oh, man. Good on the dad for not ignoring his feeling and actually driving over 2 hours just to make sure that his son was safe. Reading stories like this make me sad. The fact that someone just feels like they have nothing worth to live for anymore. You know? It's also the fact that he has 2 kids. When I was around 12, I lived in downtown Toronto and I was walking home late at night from the streetcar stop because I was coming home from a swim practice and both my brothers had hockey in different parts of the city, so I was on my own. When I noticed 2 guys behind me, they were matching my speed and I could hear them talking about my clothes, and I was pretty paranoid, so I crossed to the other side of the street, which wasn't very well lit, to see if they were actually following me. They were. My heart just sunk into my stomach. There was a serial rapist running around my neighborhood at the time whose type was me. And women of Eastern European descent, also me, had been going missing lately. So I just started running. Full sprint. I didn't even look at the road when I was crossing the street again. But I was 12 and being chased by full-grown men and was 2 blocks from my house. They were getting closer and closer and I was terrified and trying not to cry and just keep running. I was at the corner where I turned onto my street and I could feel one of the hands reach out and brush against my shoulder, then again by my hair. He grabbed on and started to pull. Before I could even scream, the guy who grabbed me was full on tackled by this homeless guy that camped out near the library usually. He sat on the guy who grabbed me and started punching his accomplice. I was scared and confused. I just stood there crying until the homeless guy yelled, "Run kid, don't stop running." And that kicked me into gear, so I hauled ass home and triple checked that every door and window was locked and kept the lights off until my parents got home. We called the cops, but all the cops in my neighborhood were either corrupt or incompetent, so they didn't do anything. We, parents and I, found the homeless guy a couple days later and offered him some food and stuff to thank him. We talked a bit and found out he was discharged from the Canadian Armed Forces and wasn't adjusting well to being back. I saw him around for about a month or so after that and would say hi, maybe give him a juice box or spare change if I had any. But my parents found his family in another city and contacted them. They came and got him. My parents are still in touch with him. It was slow going and there were plenty of setbacks, but he's doing really well now and I'm so happy for him. If it wasn't for him, something would have happened to me that night, if not worse. I'm so thankful he was there. Also, I wasn't allowed on my own past 6 p.m. after that, and I always had a ride from swim team, whether it be a relative or friend's parent or family friend. Wow, thank gosh that guy was there to help her. Going after a 12-year-old kid, are you freaking kidding me? You pathetic trash of a human being. Thank gosh this guy was there to help her. Man, he took on 2 guys too. I'm just glad his life is so much better than it was. So I guess in return, he has a pretty good life now too. They pretty much both helped each other out, man. It was about 9 or 10 in the evening and I was heading home from a really bad date. It was a 10-minute walk from where I was to my home and I stopped by a red light and waited. It was in the middle of the week and on the way from my date to the red light, I've met like one person, so there wasn't a lot of people out. From nowhere, I got a really bad feeling and I knew that someone was watching me. I turned around and there was a man right beside me. He stood just a bit too close. He saw that I've seen him and started talking about how nice the summer rain was. I ignored him and started walking. Although the light was still red, he started walking too. I sped up for a bit, so did he. My fight or flight or freeze immediately hit, and from nowhere I stopped walking. He was caught off guard and took a few more steps before he stopped too. He asked me why I stopped and I almost yelled at him that I didn't want to speak to him, that his behavior is freaking me out, and told him to just keep walking. He started to argue and I yelled, "Just go." He started walking slowly. I stood still, watching him as he walked. The feeling in my stomach didn't leave. It was actually getting worse. He stopped by a bus stop and for a second I breathed out. He was waiting for the bus. Well, just next to the bus stop was an alley, a really dark alley, and behind it a dark parking lot. He stared at me while he stood there. He was waiting for me. I tried to contact a friend, no answer. I hid behind some construction materials and on the 3rd try, I managed to contact a friend. She wasn't home and couldn't help me. She asked if there was anyone else there and I said no. Eventually there was a man and 2 women walking by. She told me to tell them what's happening. During this time, the guy hadn't stopped staring at me for a second. When I walked up to the group to ask if I could walk with him, he suddenly started walking away. I was right. He was waiting for me. I walked with the group for a bit, but they were turning left at the next red light and I was going the other side. I thanked them for helping me. We walked our separate ways and within seconds the guy showed up again. I froze completely and fortunately the group caught it and ran over to me. The guy saw them, turned around and walked away. They walked me to my doorstep and I thanked them over and over again. I am 100% sure that he planned on doing something horrible to me. I am forever thankful for these 3 strangers who might have saved my life that night. The fact that that creepy dude actually still followed her afterwards. Oh my god. For sure he had bad intentions. For sure. Like all the signs were there, man. He was following her. When she stopped, he stopped. When she walked, he walked. The sure sign was when he still followed her afterwards. Holy moly, man. That's scary. That just shows that he's not even scared of getting caught. The fact that he's just so ballsy like that, makes me pissed that there are people like that out there. I lived in South Africa where home invasions were pretty brutal. Grew up on a plot and lived in the flat adjacent to the main house. One night I woke up randomly around 2 a.m. and had this tingling feeling that something wasn't right. I opened my flat door to look outside and see if anything was going on. That feeling didn't subside, so I decided to get dressed and do a walk around the garden. Before leaving my flat, something told me to peep through the door, and as I did, I saw some guy walking around the house. I then phoned my sister who lived in the house, but no answer. I then phoned my stepmom, and after a while my sister answered, which was really strange. I told my sister to wake up and walk around the house and make sure the doors and windows were closed as there was someone in the garden. She kept trying to blow it off and even said she'd unlock the doorhouse so I could go inside the house. I told her that's a stupid idea and I wasn't going inside, since usually burglars are armed and dangerous and I had nothing to protect myself with. My sister missed a breath during our call, something that usually happens when one is frightened. So out of instinct, I asked her if everything was alright. She should say yes twice, but she only said it once. Turns out a group of men had already made it into the house and they had a gun to her head, telling her to convince me to leave my flat. A few seconds later, the automatic light outside my flat turned on. I then told my sister it's okay and I was going to sleep. I then phoned the police and Neighborhood Watch, which took the longest 30 minutes of my life to show up. Once I saw the police lights outside, I had to make a 100-meter dash to the gate to open it up for them. I then talked them over what happened and that we should investigate the house. I walked around the perimeter with them until we found where the guys had entered. We entered the house, which was totally trashed, until we got to the main room where there was a blanket over the bed. I then yanked the blanket off to find my whole family under there as they were tied up and frightened shirtless. If it weren't for my instincts, they would have not hesitated to kill me and probably do worse to my family. They already poisoned my dogs. Must have been a guardian angel or something looking over my shoulder that night. The fact that they had a feeling at 2 a.m. and they were like, oh, something's not right. That's so freaking scary. The fact that people would just rob a house even when they know that there's a whole family inside. Like normally people would rob the house when they know the family's out, but the whole family was in there and they still decided to do that. That's freaking scary, man. Thank gosh this person was a quick thinker and they did all the right things. Like even throwing the burglars off by saying, okay, I'm gonna go to sleep now and stay in the flat. Because I'm assuming they wanted to rob the flat too. But since this person said they're still gonna be sleeping in the flat, they were like, nah. That's too much work. Let's just rob the house first, you know? So it bought them some time to call the police and everything. Jeez, that's scary. That's horrifying. Well, that's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Tell me in the comments down below what your thoughts are. And as always, thanks for watching. Hope you guys liked it. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!